When you were learning about Thanksgiving in school, did you feel guilty about what you learned?
No, because I don't remember.
No, because I have nothing to do with what the pilgrims did years ago.
Nope.
I did absolutely nothing wrong. I don't relate to this problem. I wasn't alive back then. I mean, I did absolutely.
Right, I will be editing.
What are you talking about? That's good.
It's the Thanksgiving episode.
Hello, and welcome to Moms into Literary Freedom,
Where a couple of moms fight back against groups trying to control what our kids can read.
with each episode focusing on a specific book that has found itself on the chopping block of censorship. So Jennifer and I interviewed our kids to get their opinion on, Thanksgiving, get their perspective, because this episode isn't about a book. It's about a Prager University video.
Yes, and we wanted to get their opinion, plus they're home for the holidays, and
Yeah, so you're going to be hearing them in the background.
So enjoy the next few clips. Name one word that comes to mind when you think of Thanksgiving.
Cranberry sauce. Turkey.
I don't like Thanksgiving. Football. Mashed potato. I don't like Thanksgiving because all you eat is a bunch of food that I don't like personally, and you watch football, and I don't even understand football. I don't like
That's not
sports,
true.
period.
The only good thing is just the turkey and the mashed potato, in my opinion.
Football is bad.
Name one word that comes to mind when you think of pilgrims.
I don't really know about pilgrims.
Black dresses. And hats. And guns.
I think of black hats with little gold buckles on them. Oh, it's my turn. The Mayflower. Intruding.
Oh, I love how the question was one word and Asher was the only one that said one word. Good job.
Good job. One word that comes to mind when you think of Native Americans.
Face paint.
Blackfoot. Bison. Sawgrass.
TPs.
What did you guys think of the video we just saw?
Boring.
Either one of them.
Non-factual.
Boring. Boring. Boring.
They didn't really tell their sources of information, so I have a hard time believing what they said was true. Also, in one of them, they left out a bunch of parts of the history.
Is it similar to what you guys learn at school?
No.
Not really. No, not really. I just learned about cheesy stuff like the Thanksgiving parade. In school, I just learned about like what Native Americans. I learned about sea turtles.
What Native American book?
Like how they got their food and like what the pilgrims did when they came to the Native Americans.
All right, I'm going to ask you guys one last question.
Okay, yay.
Then we're kicking you out.
No!
So yeah, they had a lot of fun doing that, I think.
Yeah,
And
they might come
hopefully-
back.
They might. Yeah, you'll hear them in the back, but hopefully you enjoyed. We didn't want to keep it too long, but I think it's important to get their perspective.
Absolutely, and they had a lot of good things to say.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising too.
Yeah.
Some not so surprising, but all authentic and genuine responses. Like we didn't coach them in anything.
Right, we actually had to kick them out and be like, you can't see the questions beforehand.
Yeah, we didn't want them to see the questions before. It was just we wanted their unfiltered response.
Which is why my daughter was like, I don't know anything.
She was like, I don't know because I don't remember. The most honest.
Right, that's really honest of her.
Yeah. It was so cute. I loved it. But honestly, the whole point of that is to kind of, I don't know, discuss this whole stance that Prager University has taken on the supposed indoctrination of kids. Right. By woke teachers, which is so frustrating to talk about. And honestly, I wouldn't even give them the time of day. I wouldn't give them the energy to be mad about it if they weren't an approved source in Florida schools.
Right, and not just in Florida. There's a few states that have approved them. So, even if you're not in Florida, watch out.
Yeah.
Because, teachers might be able to use these things. I don't think many have. I know I asked a lot of my kids' teachers, like, do you plan on using it?
Yeah, and that was something I thought was really cool. Like, and there was something floating around social media, like in August when school first started, and it was like, use this template to email to your kids' teachers to be like, as a parent, I have parental rights, and I don't want, you using these. What did CJ say? Non-factual resources. He was like, well, they didn't really cite their sources. And he's right. A lot of the things they said in the Thanksgiving videos, which we're going to get into later, it was like opinion. It's like, how do you know?
Right.
Something about like gun. They loved guns, so they shot guns together. How do you know that?
And like, why are you pushing guns? Like, that's just so weird.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of this video, let's
pause and just like talk about how cool guns are.
Weird. We went and we saw them, right? And there is some factual things in there.
Yeah, that was like what's confusing is because we watched two videos, one that was geared for elementary and then one that was geared for like middle and high. And they were both factual in the sense that, the things that they said weren't inaccurate, but it wasn't that it was inaccurate, it was that it was just like very Christian themed. And
I think CJ said it was missing also a lot of context.
Yeah. It was missing information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like they did talk about, well, they refer to him as Squanto, but his real name is Tisquantum. And so books that I've read about the historical account of quote unquote Thanksgiving refer to him as Tisquantum and talk about how he was kidnapped and forced into Christianity, basically.
Right.
And so the PragerU video was like, oh, he became a Christian and like, trying to paint it in this positive light.
And even the part where he was kidnapped, because I think they do mention it.
They do mention he was kidnapped.
But it was like by pirates.
Yeah.
And just kind of glossed over it. That's
like who kidnapped him? And honestly, so we'll cite most, all of our sources on our show notes like we always do. But there's this awesome book called If You Had Lived During the Time of Thanksgiving, written by Chris Newell and illustrated by Winona Nelson, two people who are actively involved in their own indigenous communities. So written by indigenous people. And in this account, they are constantly referring to this document, like a historical document that wasn't written at the time of Thanksgiving, of the supposed Thanksgiving. It was written like a year or two after, like 1622 or something. So there's like, they keep referring back to their sources, whereas the PragerU videos don't do that. They don't say, oh, according to this document or whatever. They're just like, this happened and also guns are cool.
Right. And they do just like a little story time. But
yeah.
And also, I just think it's really weird for a school to keep bringing, if they were to bring these videos in, to bring in all these godly style books.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem with books about religion being in the library. Mm-hmm. Fine, it's
but they're
a resource.
turning Thanksgiving into this like Christian holiday.
Yes, that's what's weird.
It is weird because, listen, I guess maybe we should have started off this episode with, I am not anti-Thanksgiving.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a fan of turkey, but like I'll still sit down at a table and give thanks and, eat food.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, for us, we did Thanksgiving growing up. Mm-hmm. But to us, it was just like an American holiday. Yeah. My parents are immigrants.
Okay.
So they were like, oh, yeah, this is just something Americans do.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I'm sure I learned about pilgrims and, pilgrims and Indians back then.
Yeah, back then, like in the 90s. Did you ever dress up?
I don't remember.
I have pictures of me, what's it called?
Cosplaying? No. That's what you were trying to say.
No, it wasn't a cosplaying. Kindergartner.
It sounded like you were saying
I was going to say
costume.
Cultural appropriation.
Well, similar.
Yeah. So I have pictures of me appropriating the Native culture as a kindergartner because I didn't know what to do. So we would use brown paper bags from the supermarket and turn them into Native American vests and then put like feathers in our hair.
Yeah.
And like parade around the school. And so that was in 1992 or something. And so, but it has changed a lot. Like there's less of that.
A lot less. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect.
Right. It's definitely still happens, but not as often. Now it's more focused like on a turkey hat.
Yeah, like let's talk about the food.
Right.
Yeah. Which so it's funny when you have 3 kids in schools and you like contrast the different lessons that they each come home, you know, based on their teacher and the school they go to. It's like, it's always different.
Right.
So one of my kids, this is pre-COVID, one of my kids came home and they're like, oh, we're learning about mashed potatoes and gravy. I'm like, okay, it could be a little more historical than that, but like, I'm not going to complain. And then my other kid, like the next year, came home and she was like, oh, I learned about the 3 sisters. I'm like, well, what is that? And it's actually a really cool concept. It's an indigenous concept where the 3 sisters are squash, beans, and crap, I'm going to forget the third one. Pause for the third one. Squash, beans, and corn. Corn. How could I forget corn?
Right now, it's like the most popular one.
So it's like, just talks about like how the indigenous people of America relied heavily on the 3 sisters.
Okay.
And so I thought that was a cool thing to learn because it tied in like Thanksgiving food.
I'm looking at you like
indigenous
blank
history.
face because I'm like, damn, I don't remember any lesson that my kids. So this is where my kids get it from. I don't remember Jack.
Don't feel bad. It's just because I'm a teacher and I'm constantly judging the curriculum that my kids are bringing home.
I'm like,
But
damn,
this
I
one
don't pay
was great.
attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was really impressed with that. I was happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, before this podcast, I was at home, like, talking to my oldest about what she has learned. And you could tell she hadn't learned much about Thanksgiving because she was like, you know. But what I did get out of her, what I did manage to get out of her is that she learned about this woman named Sarah Josepha Hale, right? And she was like, I imagine, I'm making this up, but like, I imagine her to be like the Karen of the like 1600s. Yeah, or the Karen of the Pilgrims, because she didn't live during the Mayflower time.
Okay.
She lived during the 1800s, and she basically was just like advocating to make Thanksgiving a holiday, even, you know, because it wasn't called Thanksgiving. Right? It was like a feast.
Right. It was just a feast.
And that's what we're going to get into. It's like, I feel like, you know, on the one hand, sure, I'm not against kids learning about the Mayflower and the pilgrims that came on the Mayflower and their interactions with the Wampanoag in Massachusetts. So I was happy to hear that, you know, she was learning the true history of Thanksgiving because, like, the word Thanksgiving didn't become, like, used until the 1800s.
Okay.
And the Mayflower, you know, landed in Massachusetts in 1620. They landed in 1620, and then they had a feast in 1621. And I think as a rule, you know, when you're teaching, and I would challenge anyone to disagree with me on this, but you got to teach both sides of history, and you got to teach all the facts. You can't leave out the ones that make you uncomfortable.
Yes, and that's the problem with that video, that it was just kind of, you know, oh, it was all great.
Yeah.
Dandy, you know, it was all peace and love.
Yeah.
And no.
And it's like, it's taking away from the truth and the reality and the history that actually happened.
And think of an indigenous child sitting there at school listening to what they've been taught, you know, was the cause of a lot of their a lot of slaughtering of their people.
Yeah.
And it's just
whether it was like physical war, murder, or
disease,
smallpox.
yeah.
Which both PragerU videos talk about the disease. They're like, oh, the pilgrims showed up and there's this abandoned camp because all of the people that lived there, it was abandoned, you know, Native American camp because all the Native Americans died of a disease. But they don't say died of a disease that was brought over by
our people,
the Europeans. Because, and I feel like a common misconception among kids anyway, and maybe even some adults, is that the pilgrims were the first people to like land in New England. And
right.
That's not true. Like they had been there, you know, at least 20 years before, because 20 years before is when Tisquantum was kidnapped with, or no, that was only like, I don't know how many years before that was, but was it 20?
But there had to have been
4
people.
years. Yeah, it was 4 years before.
How did these Native Americans get to the slave trade? Someone had to come get them.
Right, and so in 1614, when Tisquantum was kidnapped, 20 other natives were kidnapped along with him, and they were actually sold into the slave trade. And for some reason, Tisquantum was like rescued by a monk and then converted into Christianity. Okay. And then in the PragerU video, they like paint this monk as like this, which I'm not saying, the monk was a bad person, but the monk definitely indoctrinated to
Right.
Squantum and said, your religion isn't good enough. You need to convert to Christianity.
Right.
And that's what happened.
And it also paints the Wampanoag, is that how you say it? Wampanoag tribe as like very welcoming. Mm-hmm. And that's not what it was either, right?
No.
Because they did welcome them in the sense that they did sign the treaty because they needed.
Well, yeah, I think there's two reasons. The book that we mentioned earlier, If You Had Lived During the Time of Thanksgiving, the account from William Bradford, which was the 1622 account that was actually like written down, he said that the Wampanoag chief, I'm not going to pronounce his name the right way, but I will try, Wasamiquin, saw it as an opportunity to strengthen their numbers, right? Because they were having trouble with like a neighboring tribe, but also had seen in the past what has happened. Like he had witnessed natives being kidnapped.
Right.
So he's like, he's actually really smart. He's like, well, let's just like, try and become friends so that we are safe.
Yeah. Okay, so it was a tactic. Like,
Yeah, it was a tactic.
He wasn't like, let's break bread and be BFFs.
Right, yeah. So yeah, in the PragerU videos don't paint it like that. What they do is they only talk about Tisquantum, and in their videos they refer to him as just Squanto.
And they also want to paint it like we want to pretend that Thanksgiving is just about oppression, which I guess in a certain way it is. Mm-hmm.
But we want to tell both sides.
Right.
We don't want to just tell the oppressive side.
Exactly. We want people to learn what really happened.
And by we, I mean moms and parents, guardians of students in public schools.
Right.
I can, and we're speaking for a whole group of people here. But, that's what this podcast is about, is to sort of like give that group of people a platform, and we want to hear from you if you want to, share your opinion. But like, correct us if we're wrong. But, I think we stand with the parents that want both sides of history or both perspectives taught.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's it. We want to know, this happened. It's almost like, okay, this one good deed, right? Because they did sit down and they did have a Thanksgiving feast together and it was cordial. And, they both brought dishes, both sides, and they sat down
No
together.
turkey. I got to point that out, but go on.
Yes. So yeah, okay, cool. That was nice. But we have a whole holiday around it, and it seems like it was always nice, and pilgrims were these great people, and we leave out the whole slaughtering, the whole taking over their space and
it is oppression,
removing them off their land.
So it's like two things can be true at once. You can celebrate Thanksgiving, and you could admit, sure, it was inspired by a Christian holiday. But every religion, whether it's Christianity or Native American religion, they all have similar holidays in which you break bread,
right,
and you give thanks for the things that you have. But the PragerU University or the PragerU videos want to give all of the credit to God.
Yeah,
and that's fine. And I'm not, but there's a place for everything, and that doesn't belong in public schools.
That's exactly it. It's definitely the video on its own. Like if they wanted to play it at a church, cool.
Yeah,
do that. Mm-hmm. Again, there's some issues with how they portray it as well, like in how they leave out the slaughtering of Native Americans. But if they just want to play it, fine. But at school, I don't feel like this has a place in school.
Exactly, because you could still teach that there was an alliance with the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims. You could teach all of that. You could teach that they, the Wampanoag brought 5 deer, which is what is true. And you can even use it as an opportunity to say, there is actually no turkey at this feast.
Right.
Which really bugs me that turkey.
I think some teachers have done that.
Yeah.
I do recall hearing that.
Yes. That when I asked my daughter, I was like, what'd you learn? She's like, well, the first thing I remember is something that started with a V. She's like, it's meat, but it wasn't turkey, but it started with a V. And I was like, venison? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, venison is deer meat. She's like, oh, okay, I learned that they ate deer meat.
Okay, there you go. And
that's not woke indoctrination.
Right. It's just facts.
Right.
actual facts.
Yeah, and the whole point of history is to teach both perspectives and the facts, like teach the perspectives at the time, not your perspective.
Right.
I don't want the history teacher's perspective.
Right.
I want the first-hand accounts, the primary sources. And then as an individual with critical thinking skills, I will come to my own conclusion based on the primary sources.
Right. That's not indoctrination.
No, it's
But
not.
they seem to think that just stating also that pilgrims did bad things will make kids feel guilty.
Right, and you heard it at the beginning of this episode.
Right.
They didn't. I love.
They had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. I'm not related to any of those people. I had nothing to do with that. Another thing, do you remember the part of the video where they were like, it was like the beginning of the video. It was like 45 seconds into it where they were talking about the pilgrims were living in Holland.
Oh,
right?
yes. Yeah.
And they were like, they left Holland because, what was the word they used? Modesty. They wanted to maintain their modesty as if like Holland was this like terrible
Did they
place.
say something about seduction?
Seduction, that was the word they
Seduction,
used. They were
okay.
escaping the seduction of Holland. I'm like, what? Like, even back in the 1600s, Holland was like this liberal country.
It was so out of like, I was so thrown off that I thought they said sedition.
Oh, no, they said
first.
seduction. They didn't even explain what they meant by seduction.
Right.
It was like super confusing. But basically what they said is, what they teach you in school is wrong. The Pilgrims didn't leave because they were escaping, interference from the Church of England, which is true. That is exactly why the Pilgrims
Right.
came to the New World. But in the PragerU video, they blamed it on the seduction of Holland, which I can't even understand.
Well, Holland. Oh, never mind. This is not the episode for.
You're going to say red light district.
Yes.
I mean, this is still technically a junior episode, so we're not going to explain what that means.
Yeah. Well, moving on.
But yeah, I guess I can, connect those dots.
Yeah. Well, like
That's probably, if I was PragerU, those were the dot. That's
maybe right.
Yeah, that's what I
But
would.
did they have that back then?
Probably.
I mean, but so did every other.
Yeah.
That
form of work.
entertainment.
Work.
Yes.
Both was has been around since biblical times. Obviously, it's in the Bible, but
And not just specific to Holland. So.
right. But that's they like to twist things,
Right.
So that because I think the whole reason for that, and we've been hearing a lot of this, is because a lot of right wingers, like extreme, not just right wingers, extremists.
Yes.
Right is the proper word. Are saying that America is a Christian country. And yes, the founding fathers were all Christian, but like they came to the New World to escape, large churches, large and established churches from like telling you what to do.
Right. And now that's exactly what they're trying to do now.
Exactly. And so here we are, large established churches telling everyone else what to do.
Yeah.
But like America was built on religious freedom. It was built on just freedom in general.
Right.
And it's just so hypocritical.
Yeah, so hypocritical. And they keep trying to push. They'll blame everyone else for having an agenda and trying to push one, but they actually have one. Like,
Yeah.
documented that
Yeah.
this is their agenda.
Yeah.
And they want to push religion back into school.
And the only evidence that PragerU gave in their video for using the words, quote, Thanksgiving is being taught to kids as a time of mourning, and that pilgrims were, quote, arrogant oppressors, end quote. Like, I'm not making this up. The only evidence they had was that Seattle Public Schools said, that Thanksgiving was a time of mourning. But I think that was in response to making Columbus Day not Indigenous Peoples Day, because I think Seattle is one of the few places that actually recognizes Indigenous
Right.
Peoples Day. And also that November is Indigenous Heritage Month.
Yeah.
And so I think PragerU probably has a problem with states that actually, celebrate and acknowledge the true history of the indigenous people of America.
Right. And speaking that to indigenous people, that is a time of mourning. Like, if you
Yes.
hear them give their stories,
And it's allowed to be a time of mourning for them.
Right.
That's their right.
and I think our kids should know that.
Absolutely.
If we're going to sit at the table and, for me, it's not like, a Thanksgiving tradition, but it's just a day to have, like, we normally don't have turkey, and we normally don't do green bean casseroles.
Right.
I'm not big on mac and cheese either,
do,
any
like,
of those things.
Tamales and empanadas.
Tamales is like more of a Christmas thing.
Oh, okay.
And I don't make
Can
them.
I have some?
I want to make them, but I haven't made them in years. Usually I was just the one stuffing, like adding like the...
Okay.
I never actually made them beginning to end.
They look hard to make.
They are. It takes like a lot of work, so I haven't done it. I need to learn how to. Anyways, off topic. But so it's just like that one day for us to have like a different meal and to actually sit down together because you know that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's for a lot of families.
And to give thanks, whether you do or not, like maybe you do it subconsciously or whatever. Like it has evolved. It's been so many years that it's evolved into its own thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that kids should still be taught like the history of it, like where did it come from, but both perspectives, not just in happy parts. You know, like they brought over 5 deer and they saved, you know, the pilgrims from starvation, which in the PragerU videos they mention that I think the pilgrims helped the indigenous people in terms of like food but that's not true at all. Like it was they tried to sort of like make it a little bit more equal, like they both helped each other, but really it was just the Wampanoag helping the pilgrims,
and the pilgrims then,
but the pilgrims did help in the sense that they had guns, and you know the chief that I mentioned earlier from the Wampanoag community wanted to use that as an opportunity to strengthen their numbers and keep their own community safe.
This is off topic and I just thought of it, but we talked about this, I don't remember if it was on the show or off, but about the wild horses.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if that relates somehow, but I feel like it does.
Well, you know how one of the answers from the kids was, what do you, when you ask one word when you think of Native American, it was my daughter that said Blackfoot. And the reason she said Blackfoot is because I did this whole project, because I write curriculum. So the project that I did was, it had a lot to do with the Blackfoot tribe because they had these like stories or legends that they would tell about the origin of the horse.
Okay.
And so it kind of relates to the fact that Europeans will say that horses are in America because Europeans brought them over. And that is true. Europeans did bring them over.
Right.
But the Native Americans, it doesn't matter which tribe you ask, any tribe around the entire North America, from the research that I've done, this is what they say. They say, quote, "We have always had the horse," end quote. Meaning that like the horse was always there. And there's no scientific evidence to prove or disprove it. Like there's just no evidence. So we're not sure. But this is not just horses, but any time that there's been like a historical event, the voices of the indigenous people have been ignored. Like,
that's it.
Why not ask them?
Right.
Like what in your culture, like what does your oral history say about X, Y, or Z?
And they're great storytellers. That's how they keep
and
their
oral history
right.
is constantly, it's passed down to each generation, but it's just ignored.
Yeah, that's the sad part right there. And I think that's what we need to bring up more during Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, I want to give teachers credit because I think a lot of teachers are trying to do that. Mm-hmm. But then the people come in and say that's indoctrination. Mm-hmm. So they get,
Talk about indoctrination. These videos.
Yes.
Every other word was God this, God that. Like, that's indoctrination.
Yes. And it was some weird, nothing wrong with being proud of being American, but I also thought it was really weird how they kept bringing up, and we have to be thankful for being American.
Yeah.
Like, sure, be proud of where you're from, right? But it was just kind of like, it felt kind of like, a little too patriotic. Like,
right.
It's not 4th of July right now.
Exactly. But that's a really good point. And that's something that's like really hard for people to, I don't know, say out loud because you don't want to come off as like unpatriotic or whatever. But you can still be patriotic and you can still love your nation. But you at the same time, you can want it to be better.
Yes. And I think that might be my issue is that the mega patriotic people who, wear flags every day, who are just like...
They don't acknowledge the issues that our nation has.
And they're usually the people that I disagree with a lot. So, like, I almost have an aversion. Is that the word? Aversion?
Yeah.
To the flag now.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Because you're associating it with, like, they also have
the alt-right.
With the bumper stickers about... what is it? Let's Go Brandon.
Yes, and or like a AK
47, which is killing
imposed on
children
it.
in schools.
So it's like now I see a flag and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I like you.
You associate that with Let's Go Brandon and AK-47.
Yes, and I hate that because it's not the flag's fault.
And you know what? I had similar feelings, but someone, I don't remember who, of course.
You have to take the flag back.
Exactly. And someone said, I am very proud of my country. I'm proud to be American, but I acknowledge the progress that we have yet to make as Americans. And I think it's proof that I love my country even more because I want it to be the best country it can be.
Right.
And by ignoring Indigenous history and pretending like Thanksgiving was this like hunky-dory, happy-go-lucky holiday where everyone was happy and no one died before and no one died after, that's not making our country the best that it can be.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the thing where it's not that I'm not patriotic. It's just that I don't like how patriotism is associated today.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree.
It's kind of like weird.
It's anything. Like the word woke is now a bad word.
Right.
But it used to be a good word. Now, it's like concepts and ideas and words like patriot or patriotism. The concept of patriotism sort of evolves with, as events unfold.
They just gave, there was an award show Fox News puts on apparently.
Oh, fun.
And they gave Moms for Liberty the patriotic award. Hold on, let me find it.
Okay.
So Fox now has like an annual Patriots Award. And this year, the most... That was myself. This year, the most valuable Patriot Award went to Moms for Liberty.
Oh my gosh. See, you don't want to be a patriot if Moms for Liberty is the most valuable patriot. You're like, wait. I don't want to be a patriot.
So that's why now, like things like that, I'm like, I don't want to be associated with it.
Let's just remind everyone that Moms for Liberty is an extremist group.
Yes, who hangs out with Proud Boys.
And quotes Hitler.
Exactly.
So no, that's not what being a patriot is. If, were you going to tell me something about, speaking of making our country better, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of ignoring Indigenous history. Like, I think it's important, this next story that Jennifer's going to share, and forgive all the background noise. Like, we have, how many kids are in this house right now? 5?
5?
Oh my gosh. Let's pause to tell them to be quiet. Okay, I think we quieted them down. But anyway, the story that Jennifer is about to share just kind of proves that we're not there yet. Like, people are still being oppressed. Indigenous students and children are still being oppressed. And the story just proves that.
So yeah, in Kansas, a 8-year-old Native American boy was forced to cut his hair. So this school has a, boys can't have long hair policy.
That is ridiculous.
Right. What year are we in?
Oh, that reminds me about the gender roles in PragerU's video.
Yes. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems with PragerU videos.
Yeah. So this boy, just because he's a boy, he can't have long hair.
Right.
Because I've heard stories about, black and brown girl, or not just girls, just students in general who have been expelled for having certain hairstyles, right?
Yes.
So
for some reason, they always want to police our hair.
Yeah.
In our, as in just in general, our hair.
Yeah.
So the story goes on. He is a member of the Wyandot Nation, and he attended an annual tribal gathering.
Where is this located?
This was in Mission, Kansas.
Kansas, okay.
And he attended an annual tribal gathering geared toward children over the summer. He saw many men with long hair and was inspired to adopt the common cultural practice of cutting hair only when mourning the loss of a loved one.
Okay.
But when he went back to school in August, the school officials told him that he needed to cut his hair to comply with the dress code. His mother went to the school in September and explained that he grew out his hair for cultural reasons and offered to show documentation of his tribal affiliation.
Which she should not need to do.
Exactly.
But she had it.
She had it, exactly. The assistant principal then emailed the mother on Friday, telling her she had until the following Monday to get her son's hair cut or he would be sent home.
Was this a public school or a private school? I mean, not that it matters. Like, you should be able to go to any school you want and wear whatever hairstyle you want. This isn't the equivalent of, wearing a muscle shirt or having short shorts or
Right.
showing your belly. Like, that's not the same thing. So it doesn't matter whether it was private school or public school.
And if a girl's allowed to have long hair, why can't a boy?
Exactly.
It's not a girly,
It's a double standard.
right?
Yeah.
The idea of like, even if they were saying it's gender rolled, men have had long hair,
And
even
what
like
if-
back in the day with the pilgrims, right?
Yeah.
They wore ponytails.
Well, and the colonizers wore wigs. Like
yes,
curly
and
haired
heels.
and
Ron
heels.
DeSantis.
Yeah, they wore Ron's big boy boots. Like,
Yes.
that doesn't make any sense. It's just a stupid rule that exists only to control
Yeah.
those that are different. And, to keep the control in a certain place. It's systemic discrimination.
It's yeah.
It's terrible.
And we see this happen a lot also with black children. They're forced to cut their hair. And we've seen like coaches come on and like shave a child's hair without the parents being there.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
I know, hair, it's crazy how threatening hair can be to adults.
Right.
It doesn't make any
And
sense.
what message did we just send this 8-year-old child?
Yeah. That he's wrong.
That his culture doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that it's wrong.
And
Yeah.
that it's wrong, yeah. And that he doesn't have a say on how he can wear his hair.
So this connects so well with what we're talking about. Like, it is so important to tell the whole story and to, give visibility to all groups so that we can make our country even better than it already is. And so that we can be, truly proud patriots.
Yes.
Because right now, when you hear stories like that, it's kind of hard.
It is kind of hard, yeah.
But don't get me wrong. Like, I love living in the land of opportunity, but it's not perfect.
No, right. And it's okay, we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be working on ourselves
Exactly.
and improving.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm embarrassed by things I've done in the past. But
Yeah.
we grow from it.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Sometimes I can't sleep at night when I think about it.
So, if we go back and say like, oh, this happened back in the 1600s or 1800s.
Or here's both sides. Here's both accounts. Here's the
Right.
Wampanoag account, and then here's the Pilgrim account. And like, let's talk about both accounts. You know, and
bad things
look at
happened.
This. Yeah,
But we're not doing those same mistakes now. We've grown.
exactly.
That's okay. We can acknowledge the bad and move on from it.
And that actually reminds me. I mentioned Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yes.
Being a holiday instead of Columbus Day, or in addition to Columbus Day.
That's right.
But did you know that only 8 states recognize Indigenous Peoples Day?
No, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, I didn't know that when I was doing research for this episode. I came across that piece of information, and I was like, see, like, this is an example
Yeah.
of how we can do better. And then that's just such a small thing that doesn't even really do anything.
Well, this might not be for this episode, but they also, what state? I think it might be Florida, just passed legislation to bring back, I think it is Florida, to bring back monuments that have been taken down.
Oh, it is Florida. I saw that. Yeah, it was good old Ron DeSantis, of course, and he is making it so that we can bring back all the monuments that
and
were
we'll get
removed.
fined, right? Like cities and
If
counties.
you remove a Confederate monument, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, heck.
I mean, isn't this like the land of the free?
Yes.
Where?
It doesn't make any sense.
Where?
The contradictions are just so alarming. The contradictions of liberties and freedoms. I don't get it.
Yeah, so just something to think about during Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We hope you have such a great holiday.
Yeah, we hope you spend it with your family and your rambunctious kids.
Yeah, rambunctious. I got it.
Rambunctious. Yeah. Well, I can't speak. Not just today, never. But yeah, rambunctious kids, and spend it with your family. And I hope that you think about what Thanksgiving really means. And remember,
Don't ban books.
ban bigots. This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Be sure to follow our show on Twitter at Moms for Book Lib and Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Moms for Book Liberty with the number 4.
And leave us a review on Amazon Music or Apple Podcasts, or you can rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.